All right, welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Martingano from Regional Transportation District PD in Colorado. Really looking forward to this conversation. So, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Did I say your last name right or did I totally mess that up?
No, you did it great.
I
Thank
did
you.
it great. Okay. I
Yeah.
was like, for anyone listening, I was like, I'm going to mess this up for sure. So, thank you so much for your time. I didn't ask you offline, how many total years have you been in law enforcement?
30, let's see, 30, will be 33 years in this August.
Wow. Does it feel like it's been 33 years?
Some days it does, and I know others it doesn't. So yeah, I know, and I've gone through four different departments, so I've got that, rejuvenation phase, switching from department to department. So I think that's kind of kept me a little bit young in regards to being at the same place for 33 years. I might have been a little bit more um, enclosed in, right? Or,
Sure.
type philosophy. So I think the different changes, different perspectives, the different types of policing has really given me, a balance in regards to those 33 years.
And it's a really interesting kind of topic to jump into is this idea of, how do we create longevity in the career? How do we reduce the risk of burnout? Because we know that it happens. And do you think that for you, career development was something that helped with that?
Definitely. Obviously, in regards to, holding different positions and moving up in ranks, has contributed to maybe the longevity where I am. Um, But I think it's got to be a work-life balance in relation to that. I've worked with amazing officers that I think would have been great leaders, but based off of maybe a family situation, childcare, other factors, they weren't able to test or move to a different position or a different rank, which might have contributed to maybe a little bit more of a burnout type philosophy. But each individual is unique and different in regards to the way they want to build their career.
Yeah.
And I definitely think, though, what you said earlier, the 20-25 years, retire and leave, that just doesn't seem to be the concept anymore. A lot of people do 5, maybe 7 years, and they might decide to do a different career in life. So that's been a lot more prevalent. Back in the day when you would see an officer leave after maybe 7 or 8 years, you'd be like, why did he leave?
Yeah.
Why did they go to a different career function? But I just think, society today, I think overall, and the different technologies and perceptions in regards to the public, I think that might also lead to some burnout in some officers.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that, maybe there are certain situations that kind of prevent that upward movement. And there are maybe a lot of individuals who are in the same position for a really long period of time, or maybe some people who want to be, I've heard people that are like, I want to be in patrol forever and that's it, or dispatchers, who like, that's it, you're in that role for a really long time. And, um, I think that we can start to really try to ask questions of if someone is going to stay in, one role for a long period of time, what are some things that can be done within those roles that help with that rejuvenation? Are there training opportunities? Are there maybe personal opportunities for them to maybe go to school and further their education? Are there other interests that they can start exploring that maybe keep them in the same role, but just, allow them to continue to learn and evolve and, grow within their existing positions?
No, exactly. And we're here at the RTD Trans Police Department. We have a really great training division, not only internally within the police department, but the organization as a whole. They do a really great job in regards to building leadership positions and giving them the tools, supervisory. Again, we're a public transportation agency first and foremost. So we have obviously buses and trains, light rail as well as commuter. We have mechanics here, we have, painters of the vehicles. We have administrative positions, marketing, communications. We're pretty much a self-absorbed city within a public transportation agency. So we have everyone, and we're all under one roof. We build that one RTD philosophy here. So no one is separated. We're all, each one of us makes the cogs in a wheel type
Mm.
philosophy. But we have a really great PDP, to continue our education program here, and a lot of officers are encouraged to take it, whether go back for your bachelor's degree, your master's degree, if you want to, do something in regards to being a better investigator or crime prevention skills. They come to us and they say, "Hey, I think this would be really great for our department, something that's going to help me, my career building." And we really try to accommodate those individuals to take those type of classes and then work around their schedule a little bit. I mean, obviously we can't have everyone go. We still need officers on the street and be present and visible. But we are definitely not a knock on the door. Hey, I want to do this, and no, you're not going to do that. We need you on the street. We definitely work within their teams, and that's really that collaborative efforts that each of their team members have built. And I think that's what really helps with the morale here, and and the longevity of our officers staying here and not wanting to go to different departments.
Yeah. I mean, I really like this idea of team mentality that everyone is a part of what makes this organization successful. And I think when you have that foundation of team and people feel valued, that also keeps them there. And I did want to ask you because I know you are a unique agency and you told me offline that you guys started with 5 employees or 5 officers, and now you have over 100. And so in your opinion, or maybe in your experience, what is the secret to recruitment and hiring? And what do you think people are looking for? Are they looking for money? Or are they looking for an agency that's going to support their growth? What are you seeing since you have experience kind of starting from almost ground zero and now over 100 employees?
Yeah, so like I said, again, we are unique. Obviously, we all go to leadership type classes, supervisory classes, and you're going to hear perspectives of officers wanting, more say in the department, or being a little bit more recognized. Some of those factors that are going to keep them. Money is definitely a situation as well, right? I mean, we all have bills to pay, but I don't think that's the outlying, factor. Realistically, all the police departments within the Denver metropolitan area are very similar in wage. So, like you said, you have to look at those outside components to make officers stay. I think what's really unique here, again, the growth. Really in the last year, we went from about 12 officers to the 105 that we are today. That's a huge growth. But I think our recruiting strategy, a lot of that was a couple things. One is we're just more focused on our public transportation. And obviously the communities that surround our bus stops and our rail platforms. We're very integrated. We have 8 counties and 40 cities that we go through, 2,300 square miles. One thing that our officers really, really like, especially a lot of the lateral officers that have come to us, is it's not the same mundane, you know, square miles that they drive around over and over and over again. I mean, within 2,300 square miles, you get to see a lot more, landscape. So they really like that fact that they're not just, stuck in certain locations. But another factor is, we all wear the uniform. So, to sit here and say that, we're safer than anyone else, I would hate to give that perception, just because a lot of people don't know who we are technically, unless you really look at the patch and decipher that we're not like Denver police or we're not Aurora police or some of the other cities that we go through. But, our recruitment tool as well is we don't go into people's houses, right? So if I was to go into your house, I have no idea if you have 10 guns in your home, where your kitchen knives are, that type of stuff. All that stuff is in the back of your mind as an officer, which adds to stress levels, on every single call you go to. We train them. They know what a bus looks like. They know what a vehicle, train vehicle looks like. They know. So when they go to that, you've already taken away a lot of the, officer safety issues, and now they can really focus on the individual that they're contacting. And our officers have really, really, showcased that is a huge component. That a lot of their stress levels are lowered based off of our policing of our certain locations, right?
Mm, interesting. And I would imagine that that also plays into the longevity and the overall wellness of the employees that you manage as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, working for different municipalities, working as a street patrol officer in those cities, we do have calls, but we also have a little bit more time to handle a call. I mean, we get a pretty good call volume of incidents, but We're not constantly listening to the radio. We're not telling we call them customers, right, that are on our transportation system, but we're not going up to an individual and saying, well, look, I hurry up. I really need to get to, there's a 10-car accident on the highway too now. Hurry up and give me your details and I'll try to get back to you. We have the time to really focus on the issue and try to solve it and then make sure it doesn't occur again at those locations. So our officers really like the concept of a lot more interpersonal contact,
Mm.
really working through problems and solutions. And they're almost, we have detectives, but they also have a lot of, they do a lot of investigation, a lot of problem solving right there on scene. So they're getting a lot more job type of duties on every single call. And I think that that's really helpful for them that they don't just write a report and then they don't know what happens to that incident, 3 months, 4 months down the line. They're pretty much taking it from A to Z.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. So I know you mentioned earlier you were with four different agencies, and one of those agencies was Denver PD,
Yep.
correct? And I'm very familiar with kind of the efforts that Denver PD has made in the wellness space. And you had talked a little bit about this offline about how they have incentives for seeing a doctor, and I believe it's monetary, right? If you see a doctor, like a dentist or a physician, then you can get paid for those visits. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it wasn't monetary in regards to money. It was monetary in regards to hours, right? So they would give you like
Hours.
a day
Okay,
off.
got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
depending on how many points you were able to accumulate during that wellness period. Yeah, you would get I think it was either 1 or 2 days off, depending on how
Wow.
much you went to go see those different doctors and such. Yeah.
I heard a joke one time. They said the two things that cops love is the most, like for incentives, is money or time off. And I have found that to be true. Obviously, I work in the wellness space, and incentives are effective. It gets people to take that action because why wouldn't you? If you're like, wow, I can get a day off by going and seeing this doctor right now, and I want a day off with my kids, why not? So I have seen personally that being effective. Did you think that that was effective too? Is that something that a lot of people took advantage of?
I would hope that more would have taken advantage of it during that
Mhm.
time, but I definitely took advantage of it. Exactly what you had stated. At the time when I worked, that was 10 years ago. So, but I worked 11 years at Denver. And we had, while I was in the academy, my wife was pregnant. We had our child and I only got 1 day off. It was because the way we planned it, it was, we did a C-section in regards to planning it on a holiday. So I was able to get that extra day off
Mhm.
because I couldn't take off a time in the academy, and again, a lot of that sometimes really, really goes back to, some mental stress, right? I mean, I was in the
Yeah.
academy trying, I was a lateral officer trying to pass the academy. And then my wife is pregnant, having a child, but I have a test, 3 days later, trying to work balance all that. I mean, it was,
Wow.
and so, you have those stresses. So, but yeah, the shift work, working different shifts, even though at the time, I had over 10 years police experience. I was not very, in regards to seniority at Denver, I didn't have a lot of seniority. So I was kind of getting, bad shifts and bad days off. So getting an opportunity to get an extra day off was very valuable for me, and so that incentive really made me go because I'll be honest with you, before that and even after that, when I left Denver in the last 10 years, I really didn't go to a doctor. And I think that's pretty common in law enforcement, especially in Denver. Denver has a lot of secondary employment. So if you were sick or you got injured, you couldn't work your off-duty job, and go and get that extra money. So you would come to work, in pain pretty much just so you're able to do your off-duty shift
Mm.
because my wife had gotten laid off and was staying home with the child. I needed that second income, right?
Right.
So a lot of those factors came into play. And looking back, I was glad I went to the doctors during those times, but then I stopped kind of going afterwards, and then that's that led to where possibly where I am today in regards to medical. So
Can you talk a little bit about that? I know you and I talked a little bit offline, but what was your experience with wellness? And obviously we talk a lot about like how can this career impact your wellness overall, and we know that it's a contributor. And so what was your experience?
Yeah, so last year, well, 2 years ago now, but in about July of 2025, actually, so yeah, a little over a year and a half, but July of 2025, I just wasn't feeling a lot. But a friend of mine came. I'm originally from New York. That's why if you close your eyes, it sounds like Ray Romano's talking to you right now. Um, a friend of mine came out from New York. We went up to Breckenridge, up in the mountains, and they had a beer festival, and so we went up there, and I just wasn't feeling well, and I was contributing it to altitude, and I've been here, many years, but I was like, maybe I just have a little bit of altitude sickness. I haven't been up to the mountains for a while. So then I came back home, and I was still feeling, really bad symptoms in regards to headaches and just not feeling 100%. And then we had some situation here internally that was adding a little bit of stress. At the time, I had to become interim police chief. So there's some stresses involved in that and trying to do two jobs and then keep the agency, and the department running. So I did do pickleball. Me and my wife were played pickleball, and I happened to break my foot. And I've been pretty active in life, and I'm just thinking, all right, maybe my foot broke because I'm older, and I landed wrong, and stress and wear and tear on it. Um, but then a collaboration of that and the way I was feeling, I was like, my wife's like, you really just go see a doctor. You haven't really been to a doctor in a couple of years, and this is where not going to a doctor hurts, right? Because
Mhm.
I didn't have a doctor, and I'm calling up these places and I'm paying for insurance, but they're like, all right, well, we'll get you in 3 months from now. We don't have an opening for you and those type of deals. So by not having anyone, I was really seeing how, prolonged a lot of my issues where it could have been detected earlier. So I was able to finally get in, and the only person I was able to see was a physician's assistant. And again, I don't know enough in regards to their in medical field, but that was the only person that had an opening. So I met with that physician assistant and was trying to tell her my symptoms, and we did a blood test, and the blood test came back not normal. And then it was like, all right, well, let's do these other tests, and then we had to wait for the approvals from the insurance company for each one of those tests. So that was about, I want to say, October. I finally was able to get a test where they did a scope because I just kind of felt like clogged in my chest, and every time I'd eat something, it just didn't feel like it was going all the way down my system. So they thought it was a gallstone that might have grew and blocked my system a little bit. So I went in for December. It was like December 15th. I went in for a scope, and when I came out, because they put you under, when I come out of it, the doctor that gave me the scope was, just had that blank look in his face, doesn't know how to talk to me right now. And he was just like, hey, I'm really sorry. It's not a gallstone, it's a tumor. You have a tumor in your bile duct. So obviously I don't know what that means. And, and my wife was next to me, and we were both like, well, what happens now? And he's like, what happens now is you need to hurry up and go see a cancer surgeon because that tumor is the fastest growing tumor. It's already in your pancreas and your stomach, and we just don't know how far it's grown. And you need to see everybody quickly. And so you're talking about December 15th. Now you have the holidays. So I was trying to make appointments. I was able to get to see a doctor, Dr. Shaw, who is a superhero to me. And sorry.
Okay.
And so he told me I need to hurry up and get that tumor out. Otherwise, I was going to die. So I apologize. So long story short is I had to do the Whipple procedure. The Whipple procedure is where they go in and they cut out part of your pancreas, your stomach, and your liver, take out your gallbladder, a whole bunch of my lymph nodes, and reattach my body with my intestines. And so successful surgery, and that's where I am now. I had to do 6 months of chemo, the most intense chemo you have to go through. I would go on a Wednesday. They had to put a port in. I did 5 hours of chemo at the doctor's office, and I had to take a machine home, wear a machine around my waist for 2 days, that continued to pump chemicals into me. And then I would go return the machine on Friday, and then they would put another device that, put a catheter into my stomach. And then that would shut off at Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then Sunday would just be a day where I would, I couldn't even get out of bed on Sunday, it
Yeah.
was really tough with all those chemicals going through me. So yeah, the surgery was 13 hours. It's successful, knock on wood. And I was in a hospital for 9 days. The only reason I was there a little bit longer than was just because they couldn't get my heart rate down. They couldn't understand why my heart rate was so high. So I had to stay in there a little bit longer to get my heart rate down, and then I was supposed to be off work until late March. So I was supposed to get about 2 months off. I had enough sick time and holiday time to do that, but there were situations that continued to happen at work. So I begged my doctor to come to work, and within 2 weeks, I was back to work at 20 hours a
Wow.
week, and then within a month, I was back to work at 40 hours a week,
Wow.
which I think was honestly, people tell me, "Why did you do that?" And it was life saving for me, because if I would have sat on the couch every day, I would have been Googling, you know, um,
Yeah.
every feeling I had, or everything else. And I think it would have probably destroyed me more mentally. So by having that, that outside thing, work and everything else, um, you know, that really helped me. And, my organization, my general manager, and everyone else, and my staff here, and all the officers really, really pitched in to help me out every second they were able to. So that gratitude I have for them is something that I show hopefully every day to them. And yeah, that's where I am. So I
Wow.
apologize to get emotional.
Oh, no need to apologize. I really appreciate you sharing. And you did say to me, and I remember you saying this, that you're cancer free.
So now I had my 1 year, so I'm cancer free. I do have some tests coming up. Um, I was able to get the port out, so they don't think I need to go through chemo anymore. And so I actually have blood tests next week, because I now have to go. That'll be my last third month, and then hopefully from that on, I get to go every 6 months, for five. They say 5 years, so it'll be 4 more years to make sure that I am 100% cancer free. Um, and yeah, hopefully I get good news every time I go.
Yeah,
So,
I hope so too. And you'll have to keep me posted on that. And
yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing. And I don't know if you feel this way, but to me, what you went through, obviously, I can't relate to that at all, and how hard that must have been on you and your family. But to me, it seems like it's a superpower of yours now to be able to share your story with other people and hopefully be a reminder to them that it's important to take care of themselves and to go to the doctor and to have those early checkups and to take care of themselves. Do you feel now that by sharing your story it can help to save someone else's life?
Definitely. I hope so. I mean,
Yeah.
I said, I don't tell people the story because I want people to feel sorry for me,
Yeah.
or pat me on the back or that kind of stuff. I tell it because I was that officer, and that doesn't go to the doctor. I'm the officer that, yeah, I'm fine. Whatever it is, I'll rub it off, or I'll shake it off, or I'll do that kind of stuff. And I just need to get to work because my team needs me. I don't want to be the guy that calls in sick, and all those type of aspects that, were kind of ingrained in me in the 90s of being a police officer, because it
Sure.
used to be suck it up, buttercup type philosophy, right? Back then, you weren't able to talk and really really explain, what you're feeling to your supervisor or everyone else, and then make a judgment call of like, well, maybe you need to go home. You're better off not being here today and taking care of yourself than trying to take care of others in the condition you're at. Those type of philosophies that we really try to instill today. So I tell people it's $20 co-payment. If you need the money, come see me. I'll pay you $20. But go check to make sure if something's not feeling right, to go do it. And like I said, I talk about it every now and then. Um, you know, I obviously didn't feel like I really didn't want to like cry on a podcast here. So, but But like it's exactly what you said is, um, you don't realize how much support you really do have. A lot of times officers sometimes feel isolated, and don't realize that you do have that support, and you really need to take advantage of it, and to reach out to, your team members and your fellow officers and, family members, because they're there for you. They were there for me here. I wouldn't be able to do, 90%, if not more of what I was able to do without their help and their support. Um, and you sit there and think you could save the world by yourself because you go on the calls and you do it and you're solving everyone else's problems. But there's time where you need someone to help solve your problems. And, people call you. So you need to start calling them.
Yeah. And I was going to say that I do think that as human beings, but especially what I've seen in your profession is that we do tend to feel like we're alone and that we're the only ones and like we have to be super strong and we can't give off this perception of weakness. And I think that one, recognizing that there are other people who have gone through things that you're going through and have gone through hard things and they are there to support you. But I think how can we also show other people that we're there for them. And so when something does happen to someone, they do know that there's support. I had someone else on the podcast that was telling a story about how they were contemplating suicide and they felt really alone and isolated in that moment. And they had put out, I think, a newsletter or something, or they had something had happened. I don't know the exact story. It's been a while now. I'll have to go back and revisit. But basically, he didn't have a toaster and he was like, wow, I'm just really a loser. I don't have a toaster and I want to make toast. And he like had written something and a bunch of people showed up and he had like 7 toasters dropped off on his front doorstep. And I think that, as much as we are afraid to ask for help or we're afraid to give that perception of weakness, I think that we also have the ability to let people know not and we don't have to wait until it's the hard times, right? To let people know on a daily basis that we are here. And if you need a toaster, we got you. If you need a copay, if you need a $20 bill, like I've got you. And how do we tell the people around us who we care about on a consistent basis so that they know that they're not alone. And when hard times do come, they know who to reach out to.
Yeah, no, definitely. And obviously, like again, I haven't really spoken about this, outside of just, team members and family members and
Sure.
all. But one thing that I've looked at some of your, your past podcasts, and one thing that I do appreciate is, everyone that you have brought on has given a story I think that could really help others.
Mm,
It's not a, um, continuing conversation of, hey, my agency does this, my agency does this, and really repetitive in regards to, the programs you bring in. I think, like that one there and some other ones I've heard is, having a little bit of the aspect of a personal feel, I think is huge, for people to listen to, because again, some people might experience what, what that person was feeling. Some people might experience what I'm feeling, whether it was them personally or maybe a family member. And I think, learning from each other is the only way we're able to learn, and putting ourselves in situations where, like, where we do need help, and seeing that others have reached out for help, because sometimes feel that nobody has.
right.
These stories sometimes need to be told, that we are a group, we are a community. It always seems to be that more times the officers get more involved in, when an officer is injured on duty, and it seems to be, the only times that we really get involved, because it happened while they were wearing a uniform at work, and that's not the case.
Right.
We get involved a lot more in regards to, anything you're feeling, or for family members feeling something, or your wife or your child, or your mother or your father, or type deal. We're all going to band together, because you know we've all been there, or we're going to be there. And
Yeah.
if you don't talk about it out loud, no one's going to know about it, and you can't keep this stuff inside anymore.
Yeah. Well, and you're exactly right. I I really believe that conversations save lives. And I know it's hard to talk about the hard things that we go through, and vulnerability is something that a lot of people fear. And I used to be that way. I bottled everything up and I didn't talk about the hard things that I had gone through in my life. And I thought that that made me really strong. And I think through my work in the wellness space and working with you guys and through this podcast, I've really started to recognize how courageous and powerful vulnerability truly is. And I kind of view it almost as an obligation now, at least for me. This is, and I don't want to put that on you, but for me, I feel like it's almost an obligation for me to share my story and the things that I have been through in my life. And I hope that through that, it gives other people the courage and permission to also share the things that, have been hard for them so that other people can hear that, and find the courage to be able to reach for the resources that they need, or maybe take that step to go to the doctor because they haven't. And so I appreciate you coming on here and being vulnerable and talking about the things that you have gone through. And I see someone very strong on the other side of this looking at me. So thank you. And I'm so happy that you are good now, and I really do hope that you keep me posted on everything, and and how everything progresses in the future. But my final question for you is for um, other leaders and the younger men and women who are entering into this career today. What words of wisdom would you share with maybe someone who's earlier in their career or other leaders in this profession? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier, or something that's helped you along the way?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And, I mean, obviously, we talked a little bit about making sure you're checking yourself medically, but one of the things that I really, really learned from, my encounter and, what I went through was tomorrow is not guaranteed. Um, and, I hear it a lot and I see it a lot. And especially when I walk through roll calls and, or stop officers in the parking lot, and I'll ask them like, "Hey, anything good coming up? What are you doing this weekend? Any great plans?" "Oh, no, we want to maybe, take the kids to Disneyland, but it's probably be about 2 or 3 years later. I need to do this. I need to do." And, the thing is if you're able to do it today,
Mm,
you know, it- there's a lot of stuff that I kept saying, "All right, we'll do that when I retire. We'll do that in a few years from now." And being on an operating table and not knowing I was going to make it, through there, as soon as I was able to, and now able to obviously to interact more and not get worried about my immune system and other things. Me and my wife take vacations a lot more. We're doing, we're taking those days off. Agencies have been around, even us for being around 3 years. I could take a week off. The whole place isn't going to shut down. I'm not going to walk out of the building and turn the lights off. And then, nobody's going to know what to do for a week. And I think a lot of officers, sometimes have that mentality that I can't take a few days off. I can't do it. Um, do it now because that 10 years or 4 years or even next year might not be here. And you don't want your wife and your kids or your spouse or your significant others or whatever saying like we've always wanted to do that, but we can't do it now because of whatever that scenario is. So you know live every day like it like it's the last day type. I know it's a kind of a you know slogan or cliche or something on nature, but when if you spent one day during that time that I had to spend, you would know that living every day it's like your last day is true. Is real. Those words were put together because there is a truthness to it.
wow. I love those words of wisdom. I really appreciate that. It was a really good reminder for me too. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
Thank you for your time, for coming on here, sharing your story, being vulnerable. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll stay in touch.
yeah. Thank you.